What's up everyone, Vu of Vu Films back with another video, and today I'll be talking about lenses for your Sony FX30, or if you're thinking about buying a Sony FX30, what are the lens options for you, what I recommend for various budgets, sizes, focal lengths, etc. It's just recently now that video is getting up to snuff in terms of, bit rates, 4K 60, 4K 120 and all that stuff, and pretty much, to be quite honest, you could buy like a camera from any brand these days and be able to have all the specs you would ever need to be, in my opinion, to be able to get fantastic footage. With the release of the new Canon R6 Mark II, Fujifilm X-T5, X-H2, the specs don't really separate these cameras anymore. What actually separates them are the lenses available for them, and in my opinion, Sony has that game, the lens game, on lock, because they have their own fantastic Sony G Master lenses, and then of course they have all the third-party lenses, which the Canon series lacks because Canon RF is locked off from any third party. Me as a creator, I feel like lenses are very important because, no matter what focal length it is, there's so many different looks, so many different aspects of each lens that make them special. My biggest example of this is the Batman movie, where they used like a $100 vintage lens to get a lot of the shots they got. The point is, a lens is more than just its focal length, its aperture, and all that stuff. There's character, there's sharpness, there's bokeh quality, there's the way it handles flares and all that stuff. I'm not going to get into all that stuff. I'm going to just get into the usability, and as long as it's sharp, which pretty much all modern day lenses are, and good autofocus, which pretty much all lenses on the Sony E-mount system with autofocus is great, regardless of brand. I mean, if you're missing focus on these lenses, there's something wrong with you, or it's in a very rare random occasion that it will miss focus, especially for video. The only real difference that you could consider is how big they are and how expensive they are. And right off the bat, a lot of people ask about zoom lenses for the FX30 APS-C Sony, and I'm going to just get rid of this first. I actually don't prefer using zoom lenses on any Super 35 camera unless I really need the versatility for some reason. With that said, f2.8 and f4 is, generally speaking, the only zoom ranges available, right? And with APS-C, obviously 2.8 f4 doesn't get you quite the same bokeh as full frame. Obviously, I'm not going to explain that in this video. There's plenty of other videos explaining why and why not APS-C doesn't get the exact same depth of field look as full frame. And of course, full frame has better low light capability, and with APS-C, you probably want to make sure you get the fastest lenses possible, which means you want to stick to f1.4, f1.8, whatever the lowest aperture lenses available, and usually those are prime lenses. But if you really had to get a zoom lens for the wide end, I recommend you get these Tamron 11-20 f2.8 lens. I believe that lens is close to $750 to $800. And for a more standard range zoom, I recommend getting the Sigma 18-55 f2.8, and I believe that lens is around $750. And I believe that lens is around $600 or so, which is a great deal, great value, nice size. And if you need anything longer than that, I honestly just recommend you go for the full-blown, full-frame version of a lens, which is a 70-180 Tamron, which I have right here. This is the 70-180 Tamron. You get it for around $1,000 to $1,200 if you know where to look. Again, links in the description for all these lenses below if you are interested in buying them. But yeah, the 70-180 will cover you a very good range. It is light, it is compact for the size, and also it could double up with your full frame bodies if need be, or in the future you want to upgrade. So a 70-180 effectively gives you a 105 to, I believe, 270 focal length on the APS-C sensor. So that is plenty of reach for maybe some sports, maybe some wildlife, and of course wedding filmmaking for those other angled shots for a ceremony. Another side item would be this beast of a lens, the Tamron 50 to the Tamron 35 to 150 f2 to f2.8, and obviously this will give you a 50 millimeter to whatever 150 times 1.5 is. I should know this because I'm Asian, but I don't. But anyways, this one's a bit more expensive. It's like 1,800 bucks, I believe, and obviously you get the nice 35 at f2 all the way to 150. So this is a great, pretty much overall use lens. You do lack the wide angle, but if you need like pretty much standard to telephoto zoom, this is what's up right here. Highly recommended lens, and of course it's a full frame lens, so you can use in your APS-C and your full frame bodies. So that's pretty much it in terms of my recommendations for zoom lenses. You can go really expensive and go ahead and get like a G Master or 7200 or something like that. In my opinion, I do work professionally. I never felt like I've ever needed a 7200. I used to own a 7200 GM, and after traveling with it, filming weddings with it, it's big, it's heavy, and it's not that much, or it's not even sharper than the Tamron 70 to 180 that actually autofocus is great and also has fantastic image quality. So now I'm going to just go straight to the primes, and I think this is when you really need to pay attention, because that is what I recommend for Super 35 on any system, and especially with the FX30. First off, this is a must-own lens right here. This is the 11mm f1.8 Sony lens. 550 bucks, super wide angle, amazing autofocus. Pretty much, it should be in every Sony E-mount, APA Sony Super 35 E-mount owner's camera bag. It's obviously great for your D-bag vlogs, and of course if you want that epic wide angle shot of whatever it is you're shooting. And if you're a real estate filmmaker, photographer, this is a no-brainer lens that should be in your kit. It's next available, like in terms of like focal length, at f1.8 is the Sony G Master 14 f1.8, and 11mm in APS-C is pretty much equivalent to like 15.5 full frame. So obviously the 14 is a bit wider, but just look how much the size difference is, and the price difference is a solid 3 times more expensive than this one. And to be quite honest, the image quality, the sharpness is undiscernible. And if you are a real estate videographer, for $1,800 plus 550 bucks, you have an unbeatable setup for any work in the real estate field. So that is that. Next up is my favorite Super 35 lens for the Sony APS-C system. It's the 15mm f1.4 G lens. I use this lens for traveling. I use this lens to film my kids when we go out. I use this lens for my B-roll of my fishing channel. This just provides you with a great look, nice width. You could vlog with it too, a bit tight in my opinion, but doesn't mean you can't vlog. I'm actually filming this whole scene right here with the Sony 24mm G Master, which is this lens is closest to in terms of like focal length, you know, APS-C to full frame equivalent. And I'm actually shooting this at f1.8, which will be close to what the look would be with this lens on this APS-C body. You know, it's probably more like a f2, f2.1 type of like look. And what I mean by look is like the bokeh to like field of view you're getting. But let me just open up the Gangster Master to f1.4. So obviously you can't get this exact look, but you could get pretty close to it with this lens and this body. Other honorable mentions, if you want something slightly cheaper, because this is close to like $750, you know, Sigma 16mm f1.4, bigger, heavier, but cheaper. I think it's like a few $100s cheaper than this lens. But in my opinion, when you have a camera body this small, it's good to be able to carry around a small lens. It just feels good, especially, I'm be honest, I've been doing this for a long time, and I do a lot of filming of my kids. I do a lot of traveling, non-professional work, just work that I feel like doing. And over the years, I just realized that when I'm walking around and I have to like manage other things like my kids, the lighter the better. I've been there, done that. I've carried around a 24-70 zoom lens, and it just becomes a bit much because it's heavy, it's swinging around on my neck. It's not good. You don't like things just swinging around all the place, all over the place when you're walking. Thank God I'm Asian, I don't have that problem, but I understand some people do, and it could be very cumbersome. Next range I recommend is 20 to 24 millimeter range, and of course you can never deny the 24 millimeter G Master f1.4, which I'm filming on now. In my opinion, if you are planning to use the FX30 for your professional rig, I definitely recommend you get the ultimate 24 millimeter f1.4. And the 24 millimeter f1.4 on the APS-C system gives you a 35 millimeter full frame focal length, and I think everyone should have a 35 millimeter lens in their kit. So 24 millimeter G Master f1.4 is a must buy. The f1.4 again gives you a roughly 2.1-ish f2.1-ish look on your APS-C sensor camera. Fantastic. And if you're on a budget, there are other options. There's a Viltrox 23 millimeter f1.4, which is strictly an APS-C lens, which I recommend. I think it's like 300-ish bucks. But if you want to get something full frame, you want to get something lightweight of high quality, you also have the option of the Samyang 24 millimeter f1.8 lens. Fantastic lens, great autofocus, great sharpness, great build quality, lightweight. In my opinion, it feels a lot better on these cameras than the G Master does. The G Master 24 is a bit heavy for the size, but it's still very small and quote-unquote light. It's just this one is just so light, great quality. And you're probably wondering, like, Vu, why do you have like two different ones? Like, why did you have a 24 G Master and a 24 f1.8? This lens could be had for around 350 to 400 bucks. If this one breaks, I'm not going to cry about it. If something happens to it, it's not the end of the world. The G Master is expensive, and the reason why I actually have this is, again, I have a fishing channel, and when I go full frame, this is what I bring. I don't bring the G Master because it's heavier, this is smaller, lighter, and again, you're going to see a common theme in this video. I like lighter lenses, period. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've had heavy lenses, I've had the whole 9 yards, and at the end of the day, I really value small, lightweight glass. Just to prove a point though, I'm going to switch out between this 24 millimeter G Master and this 24 millimeter Samyang lens, just for you to get a sense of the image quality. So now I am on the 24 millimeter f1.8 from Samyang. Keep in mind, I have mist filters on this lens and this lens, so it affects the way the highlights are bloomed and probably detail my face, but I like the look, so just letting you know. Wondering, I use Freewell mist filters. I currently have a Freewell standard 1/8 mist magnetic mist filter on the Samyang 24 f1.8. This is the versatile mist filter from Freewell, where you could actually put a VND magnetically on here, and you could remove the mist ND with just a magnet, and you can put it right back. Same goes with their standard mist. So I have mist on, mist off, because these are magnetic. Mist back on. So next up, I have the 35 millimeter G Master. Obviously we're in 35 millimeter range, and I recommend the 35 millimeter f1.4 G Master because it gives you a true 52 millimeter ish look for your APS-C camera, and I think everyone needs a 50 millimeter, the nifty 50 look in their kit, and the 35 f1.4 is the best. However, there is focus breathing. You do have focus breathing compensation in your FX30, but if that's a concern and you want to just make sure you stay super high quality the whole time, I recommend the next best option is the Sony 35 millimeter f1.8 lens. There's a solid, this is double the price of this, so you're gonna be paying extra for the bigger size, quality of the body. But this lens is super sharp. This is no slouch. And if you want even something even cheaper than this, you get the Samyang 35 f1.8. Cheaper, and to be honest, I think it's just as good as a Sony 35mm f1.8 minus some additional chromatic aberration here and there that you probably won't be able to tell. So yeah, and again, video lenses is all about character. So if there's a little bit of extra character in the lens you buy, that does not mean it's a bad thing. And again, Samyang, how's autofocus on the 24mm f1.8? Solid, yes. So yeah, that is that. Other honorable mentions is a 30mm f1.4 from Sigma, very tiny lens, also an f1.4. So if you really want to get some more, that f1.4 bokeh action on your camera, 30 f1.4 is a good lens and it's cheap, but I'm be honest, it's not nearly as sharp as the 35 1.8 here. And this is the full frame version, not the APS-C version. You have to make sure you get the FE 35 1.8, and it is like $600 to $700 or something like that. The 35mm f1.8 Sony that is for APS-C is a lot cheaper. I don't recommend it. Yeah, and if you want something even more crazy, you get the Sigma 35mm f1.2, which is also a fantastic lens, but again, expensive, and it is massive. And again, once again, size does matter to me in terms of the lenses that you use on these cameras. They're so small bodies, like, and it's just weird to carry a big lens all the time. It defeats the purpose of it. Another cheap option also is a 33mm Viltrox, which is also a great lens, cheap, f1.4 as well. So you have plenty of options there, but these are the ones that I recommend in my kit. Next up is the 50mm range, and to me, you either go all out or you don't. You go all out, probably one of the greatest lenses on the planet, arguably. This is the best 50mm you could buy on any system. You quote me on that. You could even check the science on it. This is the best. It's also $2,000, but this is the 50mm f1.2 G Master, and every Sony user should have this lens, in my opinion. Yes, it's pricey, but it's like an amazing lens. So this will give you roughly a 72mm focal range, which is good. You know, it doesn't get you close to 85, but you know, it gives you a nice portrait lens on your APS-C camera. And for budget-minded people, I actually recommend the Samyang 45 f1.8, which is a fantastic little lens. You could also get the 55 f1.8 for Sony. It's more expensive than this lens. You do get a tighter focal length and a closer to 85mm. So if you're into that, but it's also more expensive, $600 so. But if you're just trying to stay like at a 50mm, like, you know, 65 to 70mm range, 45mm Samyang is a fantastic option. Obviously, $2,000 for the Sony 50 f1.2. A lot of people ask me if they should get the 50mm f1.8 from Sony. I would skip that lens for video. It's not great. It's not that sharp. So that is that. Another great option for you is the 56mm Sigma lens, and I believe Viltrox also has a 56mm f1.4 lens. So the Sigma and the Viltrox are 56mm f1.4, APS-C only, so you can't use those in your full frame. These are both full frame glass, so you could use them on both your cameras. Next up is the 85mm range, which will give you a 135 equivalent focal length on your APS-C body. I currently own the Sigma 85mm f1.8. This lens is fantastic, and it is relatively cheap. I think it's like $1,200 to $1,300, but it's f1.4. Get nice depth of field, gets nice light, great autofocus, super sharp. Can't go wrong with this lens. Obviously, there's the 85mm f1.8 from Sony, which is like $400 or $500. Fantastic. You could also get a Viltrox 85, also fantastic. And I believe the Samyang 85 f1.4 is also an amazing lens. You really can't go wrong with any 85mm you get for the Sony E-mount system. Honestly, if you're feeling cheap, just get the cheapest one and I'm sure you'd be very satisfied. Plenty of reviews online, they're all great. I'm just a D-bag who likes a lot of bokeh, and I got the f1.4 Sigma, which is the greatest 85 f1.4 in my opinion available right now. The G Master is a bit old and it focused kind of slow, things like that, but it's still, I mean, slow for Sony standards, right? It's still fantastic. This thing is just really fast and I love this lens, and it's smaller. It's a nice compact size. It's not too much bigger than the 85 f1.8 and this is an f1.4. So there's that. So yeah, that's pretty much the main collection of lenses I recommend you get for your FX30. Those of you new to Sony, those of you who are wondering, you know, about lenses for Sony, you know, again, all the lenses I mentioned, you should have no concerns with autofocus. You should have no concerns with image quality. The only thing really is your budget and if you want to carry around a big lens. So people ask me, Vu, you have an FX3, you have a Sony a7S III, you have a Sony a7 IV, why do you have FX30 for? One, it's a backup camera. Two, when I go travel, when I do outdoor stuff, fishing stuff, I don't want to carry around big stuff, right? I could get an equivalent full frame look on my APS-C camera with a small ass lens. So you're talking about carrying around something like this versus carrying something like this that is bigger, heavier, and more expensive when I'm like going out to a river, running around with my kids, stuff like that. This kind of thing matters to me for personal use and professional use. I could use it as well. That's why I have FX30, and that is the true advantage of APS-C. The biggest advantage of APS-C is the size. Smaller sensor, meaning you could get smaller lenses. Size is important. Bigger is not always better. Outside of the bedroom. Don't ask me how I know. I hope this video was helpful. I hope it was insightful, helped you make a purchase decision for lenses for your FX30. Links in the description below. Obviously, if you click that, I'll get commission so I could buy more rice bags for my family. And that's not racist. Everybody eats rice, you know. All because I'm Asian, all of a sudden eating rice is racist. Come on. Mexicans eat rice, you know. Asians, we cut grass too, not for a living, but, you know, we'll cut our grass by ourselves because we're cheap and we don't want to pay someone else to do it. But until next time, lighten up. Like your lenses for APS-C camera. Don't be buying those big ass things for, you know, for freaking small ass sensor. Like, you don't need to, you know, if you don't have to. Peace.
Oh my god, that lens, it's so small. It's trapped and unprofessional.
Bro, this lens is great. I don't know what you're talking about. Lightweight, sharp, fast autofocus.
No, man. If you want to be the best, if you want to be professional, if you want to be award-winning, you need to buy the big lens.
As in anything in life, bigger is not always better. Quality, not quantity.
Let me show you.
Oh my god. What does that have to do with quality?
Hang Low Masterclass on sale, $29.99.